Before we start our episode, let me tell you that this episode is one of the most touching episodes of the series, because it is an episode full of feelings and ups and downs. This guy has been suffering from a sprained spine since he was 10 years old. He can't straighten his back, and cannot stretch his arms and his legs, so he can't walk easily. He can't even sit on a wheelchair. He visited many doctors and consultants, but no one could help him, and none of them wanted to risk taking responsibility for that dangerous operation. But when he knew that there were doctors in that hospital who could help him, the boy felt optimistic and came immediately. Everyone sympathized with him and wanted to help him, and the doctor asked his assistants who could help him. 5 doctors said they were willing to help, so the doctor gave them a test to find out who among them could work with him and heal this boy. The doctor ordered them to make a model of the vertebrae in the back, then he chose a group of them to help him. But when the hospital director found out about that operation, he strongly refused and told the doctor, "How can you perform an operation that all hospitals refuse to perform?" But the doctor insisted on doing it. Meanwhile, Dr. Sean Murphy and his assistant were removing oxygen from a patient who had been in a coma for 10 years. Her husband was beside them, weeping sadly for her separation. But when Reese took off her oxygen, Sean noticed that she moved her fingers. The doctor said she moved her fingers, so her husband asked what this meant. Doctor answer, "This means that her brain is still working." The husband was happy and asked Reese to connect the oxygen tube again, but Reese thought it was impossible for the brain to function after more than 10 years of inactivity. But she was forced to carry out the orders of the patient's husband. When she reconnected the oxygen tube, the patient breathed but didn't move. After Reese and Sean left the patient's room, Reese said Sean is unprofessional, because he insisted that the patient's brain was still working, and that gave hope to the husband for his wife's recovery, even though there was no hope for that. Because it is impossible for the brain to function after more than 10 years of inactivity. Reese also tells Sean that he should go back to the husband and tell him that the patient's finger movement doesn't mean anything important. Sean refused to do so, saying the patient's body was still producing dopamine. This means that she can resist and heal. Reese said it could be that the patient's movement of her fingers was just a reaction to the extubation. Because the body releases adrenaline when the tubes are removed from it, so Sean decided to do a full brain scan of the patient to find out the source of the dopamine. Reese refused, so Sean decided to go to the hospital director and ask for permission to run tests. After x-rays, the doctors confirmed that dopamine was not the reason the patient moved her fingers. Rather, it was the presence of a tumor in the spine that stimulated the nerves and made she move her fingers. Sean and Reese went to the patient's husband to share their latest information. They told him that the location of the tumor is very dangerous, so if they perform the operation, the patient may die during the operation. But the husband insisted on performing the operation because he was confident that as long as his wife moved her fingers, this was an indication that she would recover and return to life. So they prepared the patient and got her into the operating room. Sean carefully removed the tumor, and the patient regained consciousness, opened her eyes, looked at the doctors, and cried out in horror. Everyone was shocked and congratulated Sean on his great success. The husband was very happy with his wife's recovery. He told her that although she had been in a coma for 10 years, she was still beautiful and young, and that he missed her terribly. The wife wondered how all this time had passed without her noticing and asked what events she had missed while she was in a coma. The husband replied that the events she had missed were completely unimportant, and that all he cared about was that she got up and recovered. Meanwhile, Reese came and told the patient and her husband that the lab results showed that the tumor had not spread and that Susan had fully recovered. When the doctors left, Sean told Reese that Susan was able to regain consciousness because her brain was producing too much dopamine. This means that when the dopamine effect wears off, the patient will return to coma forever. Sean and Reese went to the patient and her husband and told them that her recovery would not last, and that within the next 12 hours she would fall into a coma again. The husband refused to believe this and said that he would bring another doctor to help her. The doctors were sorry and told him that there was no hope of recovery and that she regained consciousness because of the dopamine, and when its effect wears off, she will return to the coma again. The wife calmed her husband and told him to hold on and stay by her side in her final hours. When Sean and the husband go to the lab, Reese tells Susan that for the past 10 years her husband has been by her side, coming every day just to hear the respirators sound. Reese told her that being on respirators again was a waste of time. Reese made her sign a document proving that she never wanted to be on respirators again. When the husband returned, he was very sad, because he wanted to save his wife. His wife comforted him and told him it would be best for them to use those last hours reminiscing about their memories together. Before the patient closed her eyes forever, she told her husband that she loved him very much and wished to live with him another eternal life. Meanwhile, the other patient expressed his deep concern about the failure of his operation. Because he spends most of his time in hospitals since he was young, he is afraid of losing his last hope of recovery. The doctor calmed him down and prepared the operating room, and when the surgery started, they started realigning the spine. Suddenly the alarm rang, and they said he was suffering from severe hypotension. The doctors said that the patient's body adapted to the curvature of the spine, so if the spine is reconfigured, the patient's blood pressure will drop and they can die. The doctor insisted on completing the operation and installing a brace in the patient's back so that he could stand up straight. Everyone made a great effort and the operation was successful. The patient was able to stand up straight for the first time in his life. He thanked the doctor very much and she hugged him. The director of the hospital thanked the doctor and told him that he would not object to performing difficult operations again. The next morning Sean and Leah were going to work. They watched a man handcuff Leah's car. Leah tried to defend herself, but Sean told her she was wrong, and she parked the car in the wrong place. Leah was upset by Sean's words, and tell him that even in such a situation he does not help her. When Sean said Leah was wrong, the man raised the fine from $200 to $350. Leah left angry at Sean's actions, and remained angry all day. So Sean decided to help Leah get her car back without paying the fine. In the evening Sean and Leah went to the man who took her car. When he saw them, he told them that the fine became $500 because of Leah's misconduct. Sean agreed to increase the fine and this made Leah even more angry. Little did she know that Sean had a plan. When Sean went with the man to pay the fine, he gave Leah the car keys and told her to take the car and go quickly. When Leah moved away, Sean rode next to her and sped away. Leah was very happy and thanked Sean. When they got home, she told him that she was pregnant and that he would become a father. And at that point our episode ends. Tell us in the comments what names you expect Sean to name his children. Also tell us, if you were the patient's husband, would you put her back on respirators? Or will you accept the fait accompli and let her die?